Here it is, it's arrived. The Coleman Xtreme cooler, which I shall be turning into a Mash Tun. Hi, welcome back. For the Mash Tun manifold that sits in the bottom, I come up with some sort of ideas, and I've done a little bit of reading. Ideally, the best thing for the bottom is a false bottom. You're going to get best efficiency from that. That's not what I'm going to be putting in here initially. It's something I may upgrade to at a later date. But I quite like the idea of using the copper tube, 15mm copper tube, and fittings to make the manifold. So that's the lines I'm going down. Now, the distance in between the two walls here is 210mm on the inside of Coleman cooler I've chosen. So I had to decide how many 15mm tubes I was going to use to run the length of the cooler. I've seen people using just 2 tubes, which is perfectly fine. You get reasonable efficiency from it, but as I said, I've done a fair bit of reading, and essentially the more tubes that we're using in the bottom is going to increase the potential efficiency of the cooler or the Mash Tun. So we're obviously limited with the width. So my ideal initial thing was to use 4 tubes, but the problem being with plumbing fittings, the T section that I was going to be using is too wide. So I thought of using 3 tubes, but that led me to a problem, because then the centre one is going to come in line with the drain port, which would mean I'd need a fitting that was a cross shape. I could find one of these on eBay, but they were made in China. It was probably going to take a month to get to me. So I spent nearly the week trying to think how I was going to design the shape of the manifold. Excuse the drawing, but this is the shape that I'm going to go for. It's going to have 4 tubes running the length. That alleviates me having 3 and then having to have a cross piece here. But as I mentioned earlier, the 15mm copper T's are fairly wide. As the copper T's are quite wide, if we put that down there, we're making this section, so that will go together there. Now, for me to fit in my design, these 2 pipes here were too far apart. If we just go back onto the plan of where the tubes are, which is there, if I place that there, that one there, and that one there, you can see they're not too far apart from here. But what my thoughts were is, if I can cut these a little bit here, these points, and shorten them, I can bring them in. This is a perfectly balanced configuration. So the distance between these tubes here is half that of the sides, which is why it's balanced. They're nice, evenly spaced. So whilst I was at work, I sanded down some of the pipe fittings, and when I put them together, I can bring them down to this size, which isn't far off the perfect configuration, or what I think is the perfect configuration for this. So that's what I've done. I'm going to join these with some very short pieces of copper tube, which are here. So we'll solder these parts together. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to cut all the respective pieces of 15mm copper tube so we can make up our design. To cut the copper tube, I've got one of these. You can find them on eBay. This one does, it's got a sharp wheel there, a couple of rollers. The benefit of this one is we can adjust it for different size tubes. I do have a couple of the auto type cutters that are just like tube shaped, that clip on and you just turn them. This part tightens into the tube and cuts it. But like most of my tools, I can't find where they are. So this is what I've used. This just screws on after we've marked the pipe. You just tighten it up so it's on like that, and then we just rotate the tube or that around the tube, and that tightens in, and then just tighten it up a little bit each turn, and that cuts the tube. This has all been put together now, and this is going to be the manifold. What I'm going to do is solder where I've got the black marks, can't see one on there, across there, solder this piece together, and then up this end, this whole end will be soldered together. What will be loose is these points here, and these two here will come apart, so it'll break here, up there. The reason being is then we can clean all these other parts. So this part that's fiddly, that doesn't hold together very well, will be soldered. I'll be able to clean that section there, this section here will clean, and again at the top this run will all be soldered together, and it will disassemble from here. The only other thing I've got to do now is, this is looking down on the top, so on the bottom of all these longitudinal pieces, I've got to either drill holes to let the wort in, or slots. My thoughts are, if I cut holes, it's very easy to block a hole with a piece of grain, both being fairly round, or the hole being round and the grain being fairly round. But if I cut a slot, it's a little bit more difficult to block, is the theory I've got. So I'm going to cut various slots in these pieces, and to do that I've made a jig. Okay, what I've done is I've got all the pipe fittings. I've cleaned the outside with some very fine wire wool. I've only used very fine because that's what I've got. The inside of the pipe fittings, you should maybe see there, I've just cleaned them up by rolling that up and putting that inside on a bit of dowel. So we're going to solder these together. So on every joint we're going to put a little bit of flux. So a little bit of flux on the inside. And I'll do that to all the components where we're soldering. Here's a little bit on the end where it goes in. Put them two surfaces together. A little bit on the end. Then we got the next one. Little twist as it goes. This last joint was damaged in the post. It's got a little bit of a flat edge on it. There we go. Bugger, don't need it on. I'll give that a push on in a minute. So I'll come back to you. I'll just put the tubes in these just so we can level it up and make it flat on the bench. So I've assembled all these pieces now, so they're all ready for soldering. These are the joints that I'm going to solder. These ones I'm not. That's so we can take it apart and clean it. I don't have a plumber's type soldering blowtorch, but I've just got a little gas torch. I've put these pipes in here just so that they lay flat and everything's flat on there up to the corresponding up sort of the other end. The other thing I don't have is any of the heavy solder, so I've just got sort of a really light solder there. You can't see this flame, but you can hear it. So I'm just going to warm up each individual joint this side. Copper conducts the heat very, very well. And then when we're hot enough, I don't need to melt the solder with the flame. I should just be able to melt it because I've heated the copper up. So I've turned it over now. I'm just making sure that we've got some solder that's run through down onto the bottom surface. So here's the next two. So all the soldering is done now. So what I'm going to do is let this piece cool down. Once it's cooled down, I'll give it a good clean up with the other pieces, and then we'll start cutting the slots. Here's the jig I made that I mentioned before, just to make it as even as I can cutting these. So we drop that in here, and then we slide it up. I've got a junior hacksaw blade that I just drop in with that, the slit that we've made beforehand, just to give us an even spacing, and then use the saw. To give us our cut. Well, that's where I was. I've had to come in because it's belting down the rain. So there we go. That's the manifold finished. I'll just put the camera down, put it inside and show you. So there we go. All fitted. Well, all I've got to do now is carry on cutting the slits in the tube and then give it its final assembly and a clean, and then everything's finished. It's been rained off for today really, I think, because as you can see it's chucking it down. Don't believe it's the summer, would you? But there you go. Hopefully we got some blue sky on the way. If you'd like to keep up to date with what I'm doing, please hit the subscribe button here. Down here should be some more videos. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.